To discuss ordinance number 675, which was introduced at our last meeting. This is an ordinance of the Town of Easton adopting a new official Town of Easton Historic District boundaries map, and basically it is, the change in the map is to remove 130 and 142 North Harrison Street from the historic district. And Mr. Pullen, the county attorney, thank you for attending, is here to make a few remarks, and then we'll see if there's any questions from council.
Thank you, President Ford, Mayor Willey, members of the council. Thanks for this opportunity to be here tonight to talk briefly about the Ordinance 675 and the county's request to remove 130 and 142 North Harrison Street from the historic district. The county filed the application on May 5th, and it was forwarded to the Easton Historic District Commission for their review and approval. And we had a hearing before them on June 8th, the first one. We provided them with a fairly significant packet of material that included a lot of historical Sanborn maps, which you're probably familiar with. And it's always fun to go back and dig those out and take a look at them. And what we found was that this particular property was actually vacant through 1909. And so Easton was incorporated in 1710, and so really for the first 200 years, the property was completely vacant. In 1912 or 17, there was one property, and then by 1927, there were 5 buildings on the lot, which are all now gone and have been replaced with what you see there now, which is the old, what I'm going to call the brick bank building, and then the vacant lot next door. But the town commissioned an evaluation of the historic district to create the historic district, I believe, in 1980. And the Maryland Historical Trust did that at the request of the town. And they sent down their experts who reviewed the physical geography and the buildings in the area. And then they applied their standards to it, and they drew a boundary along the northern side of the historic district that was to the south of what is now the Goodwill building, and then across there, and then across to Brewer's Lane. And this particular property was specifically excluded from the historic district by the Maryland Historical Trust in 1980, and it was labeled intrusive and incompatible. And the boundary justification in that original document explained why they excluded this, and essentially what it said was that there was a discrepancy between, or a difference between, the northern side of the town, the northern side of Goldsboro Street, and the southern side. And of course the southern side is what we all know of as the center core of town. And they, remarked what a well-preserved area and historical gem that is, and that should be retained and cherished. They noted that on the northern side, there were a lot of vacant lots and non-historic properties, and therefore those were non-contributing and excluded. And they specifically said, that they drew the boundaries to exclude those areas. So in 1980, these two properties didn't qualify for inclusion, and that was recognized by MHT's experts, and really nothing's changed since then. So what we did, when we presented this to the Historic District Commission, we gave them the legal definition and kind of a legal summary of the standards that are applicable, because it's not often that these type of requests come forward. And what we learned was that the Maryland Attorney General had specifically written an opinion addressing this issue. And essentially what they concluded was that this type of request should be treated essentially like a comprehensive rezoning. And that includes, a detailed study, a careful, thoughtful review. You address the common needs of a general area, and so that's the standard that we presented to the Historic District Commission for their use in evaluating the county's request. And then what we did is we looked at the Easton's downtown redevelopment infill plan that was commissioned in 2007. It's the Easton Master Plan for Infill Development, commissioned in 2007 by the Easton Historic District. And that also is a very well-developed, well-thought-out, very, very thoughtful plan. And we simply used that existing plan, also commissioned by the town, to present to them for their review and consideration in evaluating whether the county's application actually met this comprehensive rezoning standard. And so the Easton Master Plan for Infill Development really became the touchstone against which to measure this request. And you've all seen that and been familiar with it for years. But just to briefly summarize, I mean, that plan calls for, it identifies this particular parcel as a negative environment waiting for change. And it offers a way forward for that change to happen. And again, I think I mentioned that plan was commissioned by Historic Easton, Inc. And so what one of the primary goals of that plan was to keep the downtown historic area vibrant and commercially alive. And so the idea was to connect Talbot Town with compatible development that will regenerate growth, development, economic activity in the downtown area. And so they had a number of layouts that I've submitted in a PowerPoint slide that I've given you. But all of them call for the development of these parcels in conjunction with the Talbot Town Shopping Center. Some of the plans I think are pretty comprehensive in terms of what they might see there for redevelopment, including recreation of the historic grid pattern that exists in the downtown core. And incidentally, one of the Sanborn maps that we found, I think it was 1907, it actually showed North Harrison Street dead-ending into Gravel Alley, and there were houses or some development right where Harrison Street goes through now. But some of the plans that have been put on paper in connection with this study include creating a grid pattern there and bringing the streetscape more in line with what exists currently in the historic core. So we had two hearings before the Historic District Commission, and they voted unanimously to approve that or to recommend that you all favorably consider it. We went before the Planning Commission, submitted the same material, and they also unanimously recommended that you adopt the ordinance. So I think, to sum up, this is an opportunity for the council to take advantage of perhaps some private reinvestment for that area and to actually allow the process to start to move forward for that infill and that redevelopment. And one of the things I'd like to mention again is yet another planning initiative that the town has done and done very well. It's the design guidelines for new development. I think these were approved in 2005. And what these are, they're largely they actually address all of the same elements that are in the historic district guidelines for design. It's 20 pages of very detailed and thoughtful design standards. They talk about setback, orientation, scale, proportion, rhythm, massing, height, materials, roof shape, details and ornamentation, color, streets and sidewalks, parking lots, street furniture, landscape design, auxiliary buildings and structures, fences and walls, and transitions between districts. And those are the same topics that are found in the historic district. And all of these design guidelines for the non-historic district should be, I'll just read the first one here, setback. Location of new buildings should respect the established setbacks of traditional buildings in Easton. And it goes on like that for all of these various criteria. And so, you know, it's a very detailed and specific set of design guidelines that would be applicable even if you were to remove the historic district designation. So with that, I would close and allow anyone else who wishes to speak. Podium.
Well, I do have the two letters we received in advance of tonight's meeting. We're not adamantly opposed to the removal of these properties from the historic district, but they did offer, I guess, a cautionary tale in that the concern was that without the historic district designation, there may not be the degree of review to whatever is proposed there that would otherwise be so if it was in the historic district. My own feeling is that there's, based on a couple of assumptions on how that development might go forward, I think it will be very well reviewed, but I was going to ask Sharon maybe to give us a brief outline of what may occur in applications for development.
Sure. And certainly part of it will depend on what exactly is proposed. There are a number of ways this could be reviewed in the future. It's very likely that whatever is proposed would require site plan review through the Planning Commission, and the zoning ordinance has design guidelines within it that any project would have to adhere to. In addition, it's certainly possible and maybe even likely that this could be a planned unit development and would therefore both go through the Planning Commission process and also back to the council for review as part of that. It also, some developers that have looked at this property in the past have wanted to also acquire the town's parking lot behind it, in which case that would also require then it to come to the council in order to secure that property if that's what they wanted, and certainly whatever's proposed to be developed on it would be part of that process. So there are a number of ways that I think it's very probable it'll at least have Planning Commission review. I can't imagine they're just going to would just inhabit the building as is without any major changes to that. So it would likely go through some type of Planning Commission process, but it is also very possible, maybe even probable, that it would come back to the council in some form, depending on what's proposed. So,
though this is the only piece at this point that really has been thoroughly vetted by the Historic District Commission and the Planning Commission, and without that vetting process, I would certainly welcome that more comprehensive review, but I think that might unnecessarily delay this process.
well, both of them were told the same thing. They were
And
told
they
that
both
this is
commented on that in their letters of
Yeah.
recommendation. And the letter from the chair of the Historic District Commission was very specific in saying that they had reviewed the entire historic district and didn't see any needs for other changes at this point in time.
Right.
So that points to that, what Mike was talking about with the comprehensive review of this change. So I think that was done in good faith.
So if there aren't any further questions, I would wish you all a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight.
Thank you. Well, I'm going to close tonight's public hearing. I'm going to leave the record open for written comments until end of business on Friday. well, realistically Thursday, since Friday's Christmas. And we will potentially act on this at our next meeting. And I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Everybody move, but now I need a second.
Second.
Good night, everyone.